So you may say, why do I need a financial plan? Well, regardless of where you are financially, you need a plan. You need a plan to continue moving forward. If you're not growing, you're digressing. So we want you to continue moving forward, and to do so, we need a good financial plan that's laid out step by step. So we'll kind of start with those people who are in debt, or maybe really deep in debt, or maybe you've been in bankruptcy, maybe you've foreclosed on your home, any number of things. You're just in a bad financial spot. You're in financial distress. We're going to start with those people and just see why a financial plan is particularly useful to them. So at this point, if you are that person, then you need to build some good financial habits. You are lacking in good financial habits, or else some of those things that you've dealt with in the past wouldn't have occurred. So you need to build good financial habits. You may also need a good plan to pay off your debt efficiently. You have all this student loan debt, or all this credit card debt, or whatever it may be. And so if you're in that place, you need that plan. You may also have a low income relative to others around you. And if that's the case, then you need to know how to allocate that income efficiently. You can't just spend out of your ears if you don't have the money to spend. So we want to be efficient in the way that we're allocating our income if we're still in that place where we're not making a whole lot and we're just getting by. Maybe we're paycheck to paycheck. We need to allocate efficiently as best as possible. And also, we just need some hope. We need some hope if we're in these financially distressed places to move forward. If you don't have a plan, you're going to lack some motivation. You're going to lack some hope that you may have otherwise to move forward and do things that you've never done and push the envelope and try to get yourself to a better place. Big contributing factors to moving forward are going to be some of those things that we talked about earlier. Are going to be accountability with a person, writing down goals, creating a budget. They're just so integral into all parts of your life. And if you're in that financially distressed place, you need those more than anybody. So then let's turn to some people who maybe this overlaps with somebody who's financially distressed, or maybe it's somebody who's in a different place. But let's talk about those who are young and fresh into adult life and making money. And maybe you're out of college and you have your first job, or maybe you're out of high school, you have your first job, and you're just really needing to get on good financial footing. A plan is going to help you do that. A financial plan is going to help you push through some of those worries that come with being an early 20 something person. It's a difficult place to be, because you're going through all these uncharted places, and you're wondering how you're going to make it and how you're going to pay for this and how you're going to pay for that. Well, having a plan and having a budget is going to allow you to do those things in an efficient way. We want to build financial habits that are good early on. And if you are young, if you are fresh out of college or fresh out of high school and you have that first job, and you're trying to make it, start those habits now, because if you persist in bad habits longer, it's just going to be a bigger and bigger hole that you have to dig yourself out of later. And we don't want that. We want you to have good habits already established. That way you can just continue in these habits and continue doing the right things financially and succeed in the long term. So we'll continue with those who may be in a little different place than those who are really young. Maybe we'll talk about those who are in the middle class and are living paycheck to paycheck. And maybe you've been working for a while, 10, 15, 20 years, and you've just been in a rut. You've been doing things the same way this entire time, and you need to build new habits. You need to do new things. You need to create a good financial life for yourself before you get to that point of retirement. You need a plan. What you have to know is that your financial life can be way more than it is today. You can get out of this cycle. This cycle is not never ending. You can break it at any point with new decisions and new habits that will allow you to push through and move forward and create something that maybe you didn't even think was possible. Maybe you had lost hope in the fact that you could be a millionaire or that you could live in retirement comfortably or maybe even more comfortable than you do now. Those things can happen. You just have to believe it. You have to start with some kind of plan that will get you to that place. You can't just aimlessly wander into a place that you've never been. You have to have a plan to get to that place and continue forward. It's very likely that if you're in that place, that just a few minor adjustments can really get you over the hump, that can really just get you to the place that you need to be, get you to that next level financially. And that's what we want to do. We want to use a financial plan that has some actionable steps to get you to that place, to push you over the hump. So why are we doing this budget? Why are we actually laying this out this way? Well, like I've talked about before, written plans get followed. If you write it down, you're far more likely to do it. Also, for many of you, you have to face your financial fears. You have to face your financial fears. And the first step of doing that is seeing it. If you don't see what you're doing with your money, if you don't see where money is going that's unnecessary or that is stupid, for lack of a better word, then you need to make some adjustments. And you can't make an adjustment until you actually face that fear and see what's going on in your financial life. And like I've already alluded to, a budget's going to allow you to know exactly where your money's going, and you're going to have permission to spend money on things. And I know that we like to hear that. We like to hear that, man, I can actually spend money. Well, people think that a budget is putting the lockdown on you. Well, maybe for some people, the budget is going to put a little lock on what you're able to do. But having a plan, having a budget is actually going to say, okay, I have this much money to spend this month on whatever this thing is. Maybe this is a particular line in my budget for my wants. Well, if I have this line in my budget, this frivolous spending, this miscellaneous spending, then guess what? I can spend that amount of money that month. I don't have to budget out that money to particular areas. I can spend that money. And so that's a key thing, is it's actually permission. A budget is this permission to spend, permission to say, take this amount and put it on this thing. And it's freeing in that way, even though it may feel at first like, especially if you're a habitual spender, it may feel at first like you're being tied down a bit, but you're going to realize that when you actually have an amount of money, a set amount of money that you can spend on things, then you can make more responsible decisions that way. So we choose to do a budget first in the financial action plan for a particular reason, and that reason is that giving, saving, and spending are best done when you have a plan. Just simply put, we need to have the plan first before we can actually decide on the steps that we're going to take toward our financial future. So knowing that we need a budget, that's a big key, and actually sitting down and doing that first budget is a big deal. Now, you may be saying, Dylan, well, how am I going to do a good budget if I don't know the rest of the plan? I don't know the rest of your financial action plan. What I want you to do is actually sit down and don't do a budget for the future yet. Do a past budget, okay? Do a budget of the current and what you're doing now. And maybe that'll just be an exercise in facing your fears. Maybe that will just be an exercise in realizing where you are. That way, once you hear the rest of the plan, once you hear the rest of these financial action plan steps, then you can actually walk through and go, okay, I know what I need to change. I know what I need to do differently. And another reason that we put budgeting first is that there are things that budgeting is going to allow you to do better than you would without a budget. And those things are save for an emergency. So I've said this before, most Americans can't cover a $400 expense. We want you to be able to do that. So saving for emergencies is a big deal. Budgeting is going to allow you to be debt free faster because you can know, okay, I'm allocating this much money to put on my debt. So you'll be able to take the steps necessary to get out of that place faster. Budgeting is also going to let you save for your future better. So you'll know that each month you're planning to contribute this much to this investment account, or do this much into your savings, or this much into your IRA or your 401k or whatever it may be. It's going to be on paper. It's going to be something that is preset that you can just say, I'm doing that much this month, check, done. So you won't have to worry about it. It's set, and that'll allow you to build wealth in the long term. Something else budgeting can push you towards is something that just sounds absurd to a lot of people, is paying off your home. Just think, if you didn't have a payment in the world, wouldn't that be wild? Like, not only being out of debt, consumer debt wise, to where we're talking about credit cards, medical bills, student loans, cars, all of these things. Think if you didn't have to pay for that big expense every month of a mortgage. If you didn't have to pay for that thing, then you would have so much money to give, so much money to invest, so much money to spend on yourself, and spend to travel, and spend to do a bunch of fun things. So budgeting can help you get there, because if you're realizing, like I said earlier, you may realize at the bottom of your budget that you have a certain amount of money left. Well, maybe that amount of money can be tacked onto the mortgage. And we'll talk about this, like I said, when we get into steps of the financial action plan. But that's just a particular use of the budget that is so huge, and can allow you to push forward really hard financially. Then the last thing that a budget can help you do, and it's actually the first thing, but I'm saying it last, is you can give like you've never given before. And, when you pay off the house, if you pay off the house, then, like I said, you can give exorbitant amounts of money. But even if you haven't, you can realize that you can give more, and you can give like you've never given before, and do things for other people like you've never done before. That's just a big positive of budgeting effectively, is that you can realize that, man, I don't need to frivolously spend all the money that I'm spending. I can actually give money to certain things, and do good things with my money that I haven't done previously. So let's talk about a couple of reasons why we need emergency funds. First of all, emergencies are going to happen. That's just a fact of life. We know emergencies are going to happen. We just want to be prepared. We want to be prepared for things that could come along in life that just punch us in the mouth, and we need to get back up. An emergency fund will make it really easy to get back up from that thing. Also, we don't want our debt to grow. Like, if you have any debt, or even if you don't have debt, if you don't have emergency fund money and something tragic and expensive happens, then how are you going to fund that? How are you going to pay for a new air conditioning unit? How are you going to pay for car repairs? Well, you would have to go into some kind of debt, whether it be credit card or personal, or make payments to the dealership that fixed your, or whatever it may be. You're going to have to go into some kind of debt. So we don't want our debt balances to grow. We want our debt balances to go the other way and end at zero and stay at zero. So we don't want our debt to grow. So we need to have this money laying around. In a similar way, we also want to save our investments. So any investments that you may have, you don't want to have to dip into your investments to pay for emergencies. Now, if worse came to worse, that's another thing. We'll talk later about when it's proper to pull from investments to do certain things. But you don't want to have to do that. What you want to do is you want to have cash laying around that you can say, okay, I've got money in this savings account. I can just transfer this money, pay for this thing. Yeah, it's going to suck. Yeah, it's going to be horrible that I have to pay for, this medical bill because, I broke my foot, or I've got to pay for this particular car repair, or I got to pay for a little cheap car because my car got totaled, or whatever may be coming. You need to be prepared. It's going to stink, but if you're prepared for it, if you have the cash, then it's just going to ease that blow. It's going to cushion you getting hit by life, and it's going to be a lot easier for you in the long run to just bounce right back. So how do we go about actually saving this emergency fund money? Well, the first thing that you need to do is get current. Okay? So what do I mean by get current? I mean, if you are behind on bills, if you haven't paid the light bill in a month, or if you haven't paid your rent in a month, or if you haven't paid the credit card, get current. Get to a point where everything that's due this month, I can pay this month, and everything that I've owed in the past, I've already paid for. So get current. Get to where you don't have anything else that is due other than what is due in the coming month. Then with this particular step, man, we want to go fast. We do not want to play around with this step. This should not take that long. This should take an extremely short amount of time. You need to make this a priority because we can't lay around in this step. Yes, it's a very, very important step to start with, but we can't lay around it. We want that 1 month of expenses quickly, because if you play around with this step, then an emergency is going to hit and you're not going to be able to pay for it. So we need this step to be done quickly. Some ways that we can do that, though, if you've got some things that you can sell them. Like if you have, things around the house that you don't use, or you've got an iPad that you bought that you never use, or you've got an extra TV that you had in college, or just start selling stuff. Sell some things that you can get some quick cash and can put towards that emergency fund and start socking money away that way. Also, something that you can do, and people don't like this one because it's kind of stepping on their toes, is you may need to get a side hustle, or you may need to get a part-time job or another job, or something that's going to create some income in the short term that you can push towards that emergency savings. Now, let me kind of narrow down on this just a bit. Is this is not a permanent step. I do not want you to have to work a second job your whole life, and I do not want you to have to pick up side hustle work your entire life. I just want you to be able to get where you need to be in a quick fashion, and the best way to do that is to either increase your income or decrease your outgo. And so this is a particular way that you can increase your income to get that emergency fund put away. And then lastly, and most obviously, we're going to take a step back to yesterday's video. You need to budget for it. Budget for your emergency fund. Budget for saving for your emergency fund. Now, at this point, let's be clear. At this point, when you are building this emergency savings, no other investing. I don't want you to do any other investing. Well, Dylan, I get a match. No other investing, okay? Until you get this emergency fund built and set up. No extra payments on any debt. Pay the minimum, continue until you get this emergency savings built up. Don't be putting money in another savings account at this point. Only your emergency savings until you get it built up. And then don't be buying things that aren't necessary. Like at this point, you're just trying to start building a financial foundation. And so if you don't already have 1 month of expenses worth of money laying around and you're having to build it, then you don't need to be spending money on anything else. You need to make sure that your foundation is set and that life isn't going to smack you in the face too hard to where you can't get right back up. So today's about what? Today's about investing, but investing up to the match. That's all this step is. It is investing up to the match. Now you may be saying, what do you mean invest up to the match? What's a match? What's this? Okay, so most people who work for a company of a given size have some kind of employer retirement account that they can access, that they can be a part of, right? That they can open through their employer. And those accounts, you've probably heard of a lot of these: 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans. Those are just some of the particular plans that I'm really keying in on today. Some of those are going to offer a match through your employer. Now, you may be saying, okay, so my employer offers this, and then they offer this. Well, what's this have to do with me? What is the positive for me? Well, the positive is in the match. The match means this: if you put in a certain amount of money, your employer will match it. Your employer will put in the same amount of money. So, just for instance, a very common match is a 4%. They call it safe harbor matching, all this. Just let's say a 4% match. Okay. So let's say, for simple math, somebody made $100,000 a year and there was a 4% match on their money, right? So that means you do a little math each month, right? So 4% for a year is $4,000, and each month That's going to be $333.33 per month that they are going to put into their account, and their employer is going to match that 4%. So if they put in 333, the employee, and the employer matches it, well, then the employee's account is going to have $666.66. Like, basically what this is a 100% return on your money immediately. That's why we're doing this at this particular point, and I'm not talking about investing in other ways. So there are brokerage investment accounts, there are Roth IRAs, there are all these types of things. We're not talking about those today. We are only talking about a situation where you're offered a match and you can go get it. You can go take it, because nowhere else are you going to find this 100% return situation. Now, your retirement account may not have this particular option. There may not be a match with your employer retirement account, in which case, that's okay. You can kind of disregard much of this step. Now, I think you can still gain something from this video, but you will not be investing up to the match here. You will not be investing at all here if you are not offered a match. So if your employer does not offer it, or you're self-employed, or whatever, you're not eligible for the 401k or whatever it may be just yet, then at this point, move on. At this point, move on to the next thing, because all I'm interested in here is getting the benefit of the 100% return on your money. So many of you might be saying at this point, well, yeah, Dylan, my employer offers this, but I just can't afford to do the match. I can't afford to do that much. Well, let's start with this. You've budgeted. Maybe you can cut your lifestyle some now. Maybe you've realized that you're overspending in certain areas, and you can actually cut those in order to get this free money that they're offering you in the way of a match. And the cool thing about doing this at this point is what it's doing is it's going to allow you to make saving a priority. And you need saving to be a priority as you move forward in your financial life, because nobody's going to take care of you but you. You need to save your money so you can take care of yourself in the long term. So this is going to help you make saving a priority, because once you set this up with your employer, they can do it systematically out of your check. You don't even have to worry about doing this month to month. So saving is going to be happening on an automated basis, and that's fantastic. That's you don't have to think about it, and you're doing something that's benefiting you greatly. That's a win-win. So let's say you're already too far behind, right? So what do I mean by too far behind? Like I was talking about with the emergency fund, if you're not current yet, if all of your bills are not to this month, like if you still owe stuff from previous months, like you're not ready to do this. This is not somewhere you need to be. You need to back up a bit. You don't even need to have your 1 month of expenses for your emergency fund set yet. You just need to worry about getting yourself current. You just need to worry about getting to a place where you're back to zero, and then we can start building from there. But if you're too far behind, I don't even want you to worry about this at this point. This particular step is not about just blast off into investing. It's about taking an incremental step into this idea of saving and investing that's going to get us to where we want to be long term. So again, if you say that, I can't afford this, Dylan, I've cut my lifestyle a little bit. I've tried. I just don't think I can afford this. Well, something that I'm going to say that, once again, this may be a toe stepper. This may step on your toes a bit, but you need to heed this advice: is find a way, sacrifice, do things that are necessary to be able to take this step. Why? Because part of your financial journey is sacrificing today in order to benefit in the future. I've heard it called forced scarcity. You're forcing yourself to live on less today and do less today in order to be able to do more later. And that's all that this step is. Now, don't get me wrong, most of you, broad generalization, most of you can find a way to do this step without having to do anything too drastic. And once again, if you're too far behind, I don't even want you worrying about this. If your employer doesn't offer it, I don't want you worrying about this. But most of you can do this, and most of The employers that have 401ks offer some kind of match or benefit for doing so. So take advantage of that thing. You're not going to get free money, 100% returns anywhere else. So what's the plan? How do we do this? How do we get to paying off all our debts, especially these debts that we're like, oh, I got $50,000 in student loan debt. How am I ever going to pay that off? Or how am I ever going to pay off this car, early? Or how am I going to do this or that? So here's the plan. Take all consumer debts that you have, other than your mortgage, and list them smallest to largest. Yep, in amount, not interest rate. Now, you may think, oh, well, that's crazy. I'll just do interest rate. You want to pay off the highest interest rate first, right? No. I want the smallest amount first. Now, why is this? So what this is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to build momentum. I've told you this before. I like to start small. I like to start doing things at an incremental level and building my way up. Because if I know that I can win with a little bit, I know I can win with a lot. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to start with our small debts and we're going to get some wins with the small debt. So list every individual debt just line by line. The only time that I'm going to go by interest rate is if the amounts are similar. If the amounts are similar and one's at 22% credit card and the other one is a 5% student loan, then yeah, I want to pay off the 22% credit card first. But I'm not trying to get into the little nuances of that. I want you to go smallest to largest. That way you're getting little wins along the way and you're building up and you're rolling upward. So then once we've listed these, what are we going to do? We're going to pay the minimum payment on all of our debts, except for the smallest one. So the minimum payment on all of our debts, then the smallest one, any extra money that you have in your budget, you're going to throw at the smallest one. Then once that smallest one is paid off, you're going to roll the money that you were putting into the smallest one into the next highest debt, the next lowest debt. So the one right above it in amount. And you're going to roll that payment into that one. So you're going to be making that minimum payment plus all the extra money that you were throwing on that smallest one onto the next one. And you see how it compounds on itself, and you're going to continue doing that all the way through. So the way in which we want to do this, we want to take all extra money that we have. So at this point, we have a little bit of emergency savings where we may only be investing a little bit. We may be investing nothing if we don't have an employer match, and we should be finding some kind of margin in our budget. And if we're finding that margin in our budget, that margin needs to go directly toward these debts. And so that any extra money you can find, again, this is a lot like when we were talking about the emergency fund, how you may want to take on a second job. You may want to take on a side hustle so you can really get this thing going. And we want to go as hard and as fast and as intense as possible here because we don't want to stay in debt any longer than we have to. We don't want to forego investing as much as we can longer than we have to. We want to get to a place of financial strength. We don't want to stay in this place of financial weakness just because it's comfortable and I can wallow here because this is what I'm comfortable with. No, we want to move to a place that is better for us. Now, the only way that we're going to break this smallest to largest attack is if you owe money to one entity, and that entity is the IRS, because I don't want you to have to deal with the strain of the government coming after you. I mean, they can garnish your wages, they can do a lot of things. They can take a lot of extreme measures. I want you to get them off of your back as quickly as possible. Pay your taxes, get that out of the way. Then we'll go on a smallest to largest journey together. Now, also, if you're really close to some extremely negative event like bankruptcy or foreclosure, do what you have to do. Just survive. Okay. At that point, there's very little plan. There's a lot more just trying to tread water and get your head above to where you can breathe again, to where you can actually make a plan and do something positive. So if you're in that place, then just do what you have to do. Be so diligent and just work as hard as you can. Be as just tough as you can in those situations. I know those have to be tough places to be. So if you are facing a foreclosure or bankruptcy, just fight hard and fight your way out of that, and then we can start meeting some of these debt issues. Now, when I bring up bankruptcy, I don't want you to think that we can use that as a crutch. Okay, so this is what I mean. Let's say you have exorbitant amounts of debt on any given thing, and you think the only way I'm going to get out of all of this is if I file bankruptcy, because what bankruptcy does is it will, in most cases, it'll wipe the slate clean for you, but it will destroy your credit history. It will destroy uh, your likelihood of buying anything of value in the future. It's going to really put a black mark on your ability to do anything financially moving forward. So that is a worst case scenario situation. I do not want you trying to file bankruptcy to get around the system. You need to take full responsibility for getting into the debt that you've gotten into and claw and fight and tough your way out of that debt. And then once we get on the other side, gosh, it gets a lot more fun. But like I said earlier, this is a grueling step. This is something where it may feel like, gosh, I've been paying on these debts for years and now I'm finally working my way out of them. Well, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to do to finally pay off debts and to finally get debt free. But man, once you're there, you don't ever have to look back and you don't ever have to pay on those things again. And you actually have something that you didn't have before. Money.